Good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Benjamin Osorio, and I'm going to talk about a research study called Foreign Language Education of Visually Impaired Individual, a review of pervasive studies, carried out by Kamali in 2017. In the first part of this research, the author clarifies the term visually impaired to include two terms in one: total blindness as well as low vision. To understand the effect of visual impairment on education, the author refers to two groups of studies. On one side, the first group of studies is mainly focused on the areas that may be affected by visual impairment, as well as the challenges that visually impaired students have to face. These areas would correspond to concept development, communication, orientation and mobility skills, as well as academic development. On the other side, the second group of studies was focused on the memory functions of visually impaired students. This is taken from the perspective of neuroscience. In these studies, it was concluded that visually impaired students are more advantageous than their sighted peers in terms of memory functions. Moving on to the next part of this research, in the literature review part, in terms of foreign language education, Kamali contemplates how the needs of visually impaired students have been systematically ignored in education in the past. This negative aspect of foreign language learning caught the attention of several researchers who tried to solve the problems of visually challenged students by making use of technological and pedagogical improvements. On the one hand, the technological improvements correspond to computer-assisted language learning and computer-assisted vocabulary learning. These approaches were focused on attempting to provide students with technological tools that may enhance their communicative skills as well as their vocabulary skills. And on the other hand, the pedagogical improvements were focused on developing visually challenged students' self-esteem and assurance. This would be achieved by making the visually impaired students complete the same tasks as their sighted peers and along with their peers, and not by excluding them from the class. Finally, in the conclusion of this research, Kamali concludes with three methods that may enhance foreign language learning in visually impaired students. The first method corresponds to equal treatment, and this would be related to treating visually impaired students equally no matter what their disability is. And this would be done with the objective of improving visually impaired students' self-esteem and assurance. The second method corresponds to auditory input, and this would be related to making use of a variety of auditory tasks and activities in order to enhance other skills such as reading, writing, or speaking. And the final method, and the one that the author highlights the most, would correspond to assistive technology, and it is related to providing specific technologies developed to visually impaired people. And some examples of these technologies would correspond to audio transcription, tactile methods, and spoken information. And in the case of totally blind students, the tools that may be used and that the author suggests would correspond to speech synthesizers, braille cells, and braille embossing printers. That would be all, and I hope you like it. Thank you for listening.